Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Monday edition of the Dirt Talk podcast. Today, we're going to talk about bridges and money. My favorite topics, infrastructure and dollars. What prompted this conversation is the event that unfolded weeks ago in Baltimore, with the bridge collapsing after being hit by the container ship.
I don't know if it is even weeks. I think it was days ago.
Well, but when this goes out, it'll be weeks.
Yeah.
And so the saga is going to be ongoing for years because the cleanup is going to take. They're just being way too optimistic about the timeline for cleanup with how much material's in the water. And then to replace it's going to be probably 5 years minimum, because we can't build stuff very fast here. And there's a lot of bridge experts on the internet. And what's been most surprising to me is how surprised people are about how vulnerable our infrastructure is. And not just in the United States, but global infrastructure. All it takes is just one of these things to create massive effects, not just throughout our country, but around the world. And I wanted to just dig in on how vulnerable we really are from an infrastructure standpoint. So everybody has the facts because it is a massive problem. It's something that keeps me up at night. I know too much about this to claim ignorance now. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but the math doesn't really check out, and it's frightening. It's frightening because the U.S. economy is directly correlated to the quality of our infrastructure, and the quality of our infrastructure is not getting better. And I travel around the world. I see the infrastructure outside the United States. It's oftentimes way better than what we have here. And so I think we're kidding ourselves when we sit here and say, oh yeah, we're the best in the world. I've seen the best in the world. It's not even comparable to what we have in the United States. And to see some of these new projects, infrastructure spending is great. I'm all for it. I am obviously very pro infrastructure, but seeing some of the spending going on right now on some of these projects that I don't think create really a return on investment is alarming. So I wanted to start with the ARTBA, the American Road and Transportation Builders Association, their 2022 Bridge Report by Dr. Allison Black. She's the chief economist there. The highlights here are, and this is 2022, not much changes in bridges year over year. So you can use data from a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it to be pretty consistent with where we're at 2024. 36% of U.S. bridges, nearly 224,000 spans, need repair work. And 78,800 bridges should be replaced. More than 43,500 bridges are rated in poor condition and classified as structurally deficient. And motorists cross these structures 167.5 million times per day. And to replace these structurally deficient bridges at the current pace, it would take nearly 30 years. 30 years. Well, 30's...
It's a long time.
We built the whole U.S. interstate system in less than that amount of time.
Like, you just need to replace all of this.
Based on average repair and replacement cost data published by the Federal Highway Administration and submitted by bridge owners, typically state DOTs, ARTBA estimates the cost of identified repairs for all 224,000 bridges, including the 43,578 structurally deficient, is $260 billion. And the structurally deficient bridges represent 7% of the 2021 U.S. bridge inventory. So over $250 billion necessary just to get our existing bridges up to snuff.
And this is from 2 years ago, too.
Yeah, it's probably about the same.
Yeah.
The change year over year is minimal. Okay, so you might say, well, hey, good news, gang. We have this new infrastructure bill. Yes, we do. The U.S. Department of Transportation announced January 14th, this is 2022, it would disperse more than $27.5 billion to states for bridge repairs over the next 5 years. So $27.5 billion, but we need $260 billion to just replace or repair the structurally deficient bridges.
GoFundMe?
So yeah, the math is a little off. And then just to explain how so what does structurally deficient mean? As part of bridge inspections, they typically inspect every bridge at least once every 2 years. Key parts of the structure, including the bridge deck, superstructure, and substructure, are rated on a scale of 0 to 9, with 9 being excellent condition. With a rating of 4 or below, the bridge is in poor condition. And you can see here, here's a number 4 rating. So 4 means poor condition. That means advanced section loss, deterioration, spalling, or scour. Then 3 is serious condition. Loss of section, deterioration, spalling, or scour have seriously affected primary structural components. 2, critical condition. Advanced deterioration of primary structural elements. That's over 1,000 bridges that are in critical condition that people are using every single day. And then 1 is imminent failure condition. Major deterioration or section loss present in critical structural components, over 400 bridges in America. And then you have failed condition, out of service. So the imminent failure condition bridges are still in service, which is wild. So yeah, I guess on the worst rankings too in this report, West Virginia, Iowa, and Rhode Island are the 3 worst states. So if you live there,
Yep.
I am sorry to tell you, hold your breath as you drive over every bridge, because who knows what's underneath you. We had a golden era of infrastructure in the mid 20th century, especially with Eisenhower ushering in the interstate system and all of the upgrades we made across the United States when it came to rail, or then later in the 20th century, broadband communication, fiber. We've done some amazing things, but I think we're still fooled in America thinking that we're best in class. But if you look at data like this, you can clearly see that, well, this is very troubling because these bridges aren't getting any newer, and it's only harder to build or replace existing bridges. So that's just the bridge report. I'm not even going to get into the American Society of Civil Engineers, their infrastructure report card. Maybe that's another episode. I wanted to just highlight bridges because that is what's being scrutinized right now under this whole Baltimore situation. And I know the Baltimore situation was a freak accident of a ship running into a bridge and it collapsing that way. But I saw that, and honestly, it was shocking and terrible, but I was not that surprised. And I've actually been I've actually been surprised that this hasn't happened more over the past few years. And these bridges are only getting older, only getting worse. The repairs are not keeping up. So when does stuff really start to critically fail is the question. It's not if, it's when at this point. So, saw a lot of comments online. But wait, the Biden administration passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, which authorizes $1.2 trillion for transportation and infrastructure spending. However, I've learned you have to be careful with what they name bills because it's oftentimes completely misleading. So they've touted it as $1.2 trillion, which is a lot of money. Still a small fraction of the U.S. debt, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And also still over a 10-year period, a small fraction of our defense budget, but that's another discussion. Yeah. So in the 1.2 trillion, baseline spending is $650 billion, which is the federal government, what the federal government was already planning to spend. So they put within this bill, over half of this bill is already money that they had planned to spend. But let's throw it in there to inflate the number to make us, so we can really hold on to this. And then new infrastructure investment, that means $550 billion in funding above the baseline for new investments and programs. And so of this $550 billion, where is the money going? Well, roads and bridges, $110 billion. And remember to just get our bridges, existing bridges up to snuff, up to structurally sound, it would cost an estimated $260 billion. So still less than half of what we need just to repair the existing bridges, not the roads, and not to expand roads, not to add anything new, just to repair existing bridges. So of less than half of what we need just for those bridges. Power grid, $73 billion. Passenger and freight rail, $66 billion. Broadband, $65 billion. Water, $55 billion. Resiliency, $46 billion. Transit, $39 billion. Airports, $25 billion. Environmental remediation, $21 billion. That's largely cleaning up after the U.S. military. Ports and waterways, $17 billion. Safety, $11 billion. Who knows what that means? And then you get into EV infrastructure and low carbon buses and ferries for a total of $15 billion. So it sounds like
on that,
huh?
$15 billion on EVs.
EV infrastructure and low carbon buses and ferries.
Interesting.
So it sounds like cool. Wow, we're spending another $1 trillion in infrastructure, which is great, but we're actually spending an additional $500 billion, and then of that $500 billion, only about 20% of it is going to roads and bridges, in which we use every day. Now, okay, still, you sit here and think, and I still sit here and think, okay, cool, more money is good, right? Let's spend more, and that's what these companies, these associations lobby for, is more spending. Let's just get more money. Yeah. But it's like what I've seen with college scholarships. Let's help kids go to school by covering the cost of tuition, but let's not question the spiraling cost of tuition. It doesn't address the core problem, which is tuition going out of control, far outpacing most other indexes. And so, all right, cool, we're spending this additional money, but is all the spending good? And so here's an article, and I can pull up a bunch of these. This was just the first thing I found, by Christopher Ho, published 3rd of December 2023. And it starts with the $127.9 billion California high-speed rail project that is still far from completion and will potentially never be completed. The $4.45 billion Second Ave subway extension in New York City that's only 1.8 miles long. These projects are shining exemplars of the very worst and disastrous infrastructure cost overruns in the United States. And I see this happening more and more, which is alarming. He goes on to say, in fact, it is estimated that at the current pace of improvement to infrastructure, the U.S. economy will lose over $10 trillion of GDP, translating to $3,300 per household and over 3.3 million jobs by 2039, which is American Society of Civil Engineers 2021. This cost comes from commutes taking longer, basic utilities like electricity and water becoming more unreliable, and then increased shipping costs. Continuing on here, how do U.S. infrastructure costs compare to other developed countries? The cost of the 1.8 mile Second Ave subway was 8 to 12 times more expensive for comparable projects in Sweden, France, or Germany. This means that Stockholm, Paris, and Berlin can get a staggering 8 to 10 miles of subway, enough for an entire subway line for the same cost as 1 mile of subway in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only getting worse. Staggeringly, highway construction costs jump 50% between December 2020 and summer of 2022, according to the National Highway Construction Cost Index. This means that many critical road safety upgrades and efforts to relieve traffic congestion will not be completed. The U.S. has been completely incapable of containing these exploding infrastructure costs. And why are infrastructure costs so high? Culprits include an excessively complicated environmental regulatory review process that takes years, flawed government contracts, and the failure to raise more private investment to assume financial risk in infrastructure projects. I would say cost of infrastructure is why it's so high. So if we had $1.2 trillion to actually spend on infrastructure and roads, that would more than pay for the inflation-adjusted amount that we paid for the interstate system back in the day, which is wild. So it's like, why is it costing so much? A lot of it is down to these environmental reviews. Here we go. Here, in fact, the average environmental impact statement required by NEPA is over 600 pages long and takes 4.5 years. This process substantially increases the costs and time for critical projects like the California High-Speed Rail project and the New York 2nd Ave subway extension. And then he goes into explaining how single individuals are able to use these laws and these reviews to block entire infrastructure projects. And so infrastructure projects that were greenlit 15 years ago are still under review right now and still locked up in litigation, which is a damn shame.
So, I mean, they're paying lawyers lots of money.
It's all lawyers and these engineering firms and these environmental firms. Yeah, there's this huge cost to getting...
I mean, these things need to be looked into, obviously. You need environmental reviews.
Yeah, but the environmental reviews have spiraled way out of control. So that, I think, is a big reason. Number two is fuel has been very... up and down over the past few years, especially 2022, and this was when this study was done. Fuel was big.
Well, something happened that year too.
Cost of equipment was way beyond is way beyond where it was. Cost of materials way beyond what it was. So every time I've talked with a construction executive, I've talked with many construction executives that would, in theory, be jumping for joy at the bipartisan infrastructure law and all of this additional infrastructure spending. All they've basically said is, well, it really just, all it does is cover inflation, nothing more than that. So it's not really getting us anything new. It's just making up for the existing inflation that we've seen over the past 5 years in infrastructure spend.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that word is a mystery to a lot of people, though, like inflation, because it seems like the cost is even higher than the adjustment for inflation.
Yeah. Well, and then, okay, so now the infrastructure is not getting built because the low bid came in at 43%, whatever the engineer's estimate was. Mm-hmm. And so then the DOT doesn't have that budgeted and now has to kick the can down the road, which I'm hearing is happening in just about every state in the union right now. Is, hey, yeah, we have these critical infrastructure projects that we need to build, but we just can't do it because this has to take priority, or we don't have the funds, or we had one contractor submit a bid. It's a huge problem. Huge problem. And then, I mean, I can continue going down this rabbit hole. I then looked at a chart, pure curiosity here. Global investment on inland transport infrastructure as share of GDP in 2021 by selected countries. The country at the top of the list. So 4.8% of their GDP spent on inland infrastructure in the year 2021. Guess which country in the world?
I'm going to say Germany because the roads were nice there.
China. China. Germany has nice roads, but they're mostly developed.
Yeah, true.
So China is number one.
I mean, they rely on trucking to transport a lot of goods from inland China.
Well, they've also invested $1 trillion in rail too. They've built more rail than I think the rest of the world combined over the past decade.
Yeah,
it's crazy what they've done with rail. United States is not second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. You have to go all the way down. So China is 4.8%. United States is 0.5% of GDP spent on infrastructure. Now, why is this? Well, the United States are, you can start to, I mean, we're much more developed than China is. China's been developing, but you can also look at the difference in foreign policy. The United States, our foreign policy is to spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on weapons.
To be the world's police.
That we, yeah, well, not even that though, because we haven't done a very good job at that over the past few years.
Yeah, clearly not.
That's been a failure in policy. It's in the past 25 years. We haven't done a very good job at that. So we go and buy weapons and sell weapons and help make the defense contractors very, 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 very wealthy. Almost all of the top zip codes, the wealthy zip codes in the United States, are surrounding Washington, D.C., which is curious. China, for those that don't know, has the Belt and Road Initiative. And you can say what you want about the Belt and Road Initiative, but I think it's a pretty good policy overall. And it's that, hey, instead of basically forming allies with people around the world, mostly in the Middle East and Asia and Africa through force, we are going to invest in their infrastructure and grow their economies. And if their economies grow, we can sell them more stuff. And then we can trade with them and we can extract resources from them. And it has proven, there are mixed reviews on Belt and Road Initiative, but I would say it has proven to be far more influential over the past few decades than our foreign policy has been. And so not only is China invested in infrastructure in China, but they have invested in an absurd amount of infrastructure in the Middle East, in Asia, and in Africa.
But are they putting up this infrastructure too quick? Like, do you think it's up to back?
We'll find out, but they've done it. And we can sit here and criticize, but it's like, well, our bridges are falling apart.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
So if our infrastructure was perfect and like a model for the rest of the world, absolutely. But the more I travel around the United States,
the crazier shit you see.
Well, the less confidence I have in our infrastructure.
Yeah. And the interstate was built also for kind of a defensive thing. It can be used for setting up temporary runways around the United States.
Yeah, but its primary purpose was to get people and goods from point A to point B more effective. And if you do that, the more efficiently you can trade within a country and with other countries, the faster your economy can grow and the more robust your economy. It is a matter of trade, foreign trade, domestic trade.
Yeah.
And so we have a rail network in the United States that people, I actually think is very good, that people don't recognize because they think, well, we have no passenger rail, which means we have no rail. It's like, no, we have an amazing freight rail network.
It's massive.
But then trucking, automotive, getting from point A to point B, it's one of the best things we'd ever done as an economy to date.
Yep.
But again, it's now I think we're just riding the coattails of past generations. And okay, cool, we can keep spending money and throwing money at this, but the problem's not getting better. So at what point do we ask ourselves, what needs to change so that we can build the infrastructure our country really needs to succeed long term? And I don't see it as a priority, and it shouldn't even be an argument, which is the shocking thing about it. It's like, why are roads and bridges and infrastructure, why is it a us versus them thing? Like, shouldn't this be a, hey, we're all in this together and we ought to figure this out, because if we don't, we're screwed. And again, I go to these other countries, like many in the Middle East, that are prioritizing infrastructure right now. And it is absolutely spectacular. And it's amazing for me to watch these Americans over here that have never been over there sit there and criticize it when when where they live is falling apart.
Yeah, I just don't. We don't have that trust in other countries because we just don't understand how they operate, like from a construction standpoint.
Yeah, well, and just again, we think we're better than we are.
Yeah,
and we're not. The most impressive infrastructure I have seen in the world has always been in foreign countries.
And I mean, a lot of people. I think we have that pedigree on paper where it's like, well, look at all of our litigation, look at all of our environmental reviews, and look at how clean and efficient we're doing things. But other countries are doing the same things. You just don't see it. I mean, they just don't talk about it, really.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I mean, maybe China's not, but
I went to China and I rode on their. I spent 4 or 5 hours on their high-speed rail network, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah,
it was so brilliant. And if I had high-speed rail that actually functioned, I would use it all the time over air travel. Again, the Middle East just blows me away. You fly into Saudi Arabia, and it's the nicest airport you've ever been in your life, and you're like, well, where am I? What is going on here? You go to Dubai and look at the roads, or Europe. I mean, you go to Europe and a lot of their infrastructure, like Germany, is spectacular. And I'm not, you can cherry pick different things and make this argument in any which way. I just think the foundation of the argument I want to make today is, one, the United States is only as good as our infrastructure. That's it.
Yeah.
And if we want a flourish future state, we need strong infrastructure. 2, our infrastructure is not getting better. It is getting worse because of time, and it is deteriorating. 3, we are spending a lot on infrastructure, but we are not creating nearly the return on investment that we've made in prior generations. So what needs to change so that we can identify what infrastructure we need to succeed as a nation and build it efficiently without screwing everybody in the process? And we're not going to solve it here. And maybe it will never be solved, which is the scary thing about this, but I at least wanted to present some of the facts. And here is where infrastructure is on the macro level in the United States. And to me, it's alarming. And in many ways upsetting.
Yeah, not really the space to present solutions to this, because there are people who are much more qualified to.
You'd think so.
But
I don't think so. You'd think you'd want them to be more qualified, but no, it's just become like, why is infrastructure this political game in the United States? It's just
actually, I mean, because this is a government issue, I don't think that there are people in our current government that are qualified to handle this level of deterioration of our infrastructure. And I think it's going to have to come from an outside source. So, I mean, they can fund it as much as they want, but if there's not people on the other side to field it, that money is going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, if the money is not being used, then it's going somewhere else because someone is going to make a profit, turn a profit.
To defense contractors.
Yeah. Or lawyers or whoever you want to think the villain is.
Our entire Congress they're all lawyers.
Yeah. They all have legal degrees from wherever.
So that is a little bit on bridges in the United States. And this is not to throw any shade at contractors. I am so pro contractor. If you haven't noticed, it hurts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still see contractors touting, oh, this project for this amount of money and this project for that amount of money. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, is that spending a good thing? Because I don't know if it is. And cool, yeah, it creates jobs and so on and so forth. But it's out of control. Like, I don't think you can sit there. I don't know who can sit there and say, yeah, $130 billion on this California high-speed rail project, even if it is perfect and flawlessly operates one day between downtown Los Angeles and downtown San Francisco, which is what the original, who knows if it's so in question that if it's even going to happen. But if it were even to become a reality, I don't know who could sit there and say, unless they're directly involved in the project, $130 billion was money well spent. Meanwhile, drive down I-5, drive down the 101, just drive those roads. And it's like, so we're spending over $100 billion on this project that who knows if it's actually going to function or not. When
you said it was light rail. That's passenger.
High-speed rail.
High-speed rail.
Yeah, high-speed rail. Again, I'm all for the people building it. I'm all for the contractors, but I just can't sit here and say, "Oh yeah, that's a great investment. That's really, really solid. That's a solid use of our tax dollars."
And it's only moving people, correct?
Yeah,
it's not.
No.
So you're telling me that just moving people between, you said, Los Angeles and San Fran?
Yes.
Is going to generate $130 billion
of value for the taxpayers of California and the United States. And right now, it only goes from Bakersfield to Modesto.
Yeah,
and go to Bakersfield, go to Modesto.
Yeah.
Well, how much did we spend on this? It
doesn't seem like the math is working out.
It's sickening in a way.
Yeah, it's really hard to see.
So anyway, that's what we got for you today. Let us know what you think. Write us at dirttalkandbillwood.com. Say, wow, yeah, I totally agree. Or, wow, you're an idiot, and this is why. Would love to hear from you either way. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Stay dirty, everybody.